Hi, welcome to Tea and Talk. I'm your host, Olivia Boughton. Today I am joined by local legend, Jack Healey. Jack, thank you so much for being here with me today.
Well, it's a pleasure. Great to be here.
It's great to have you. And before we get talking, I'm so excited to hear all kinds of things, maybe even stuff I don't know about you. But let's talk about the tea. So the teapot that we have here is actually a Polish pottery piece. I used it once before on my show, and I just love it because it's such a unique teapot, and it's great. The teacups that I have today are not a match to that, but they have some florals on them, and I thought that it all looked kind of nice together. So the tea that I am serving is a blended black tea, and it's called Queen Catherine. And it was named for Queen Catherine of Braganza, who was married to King Charles II in the 17th century. She was from Portugal, and when she came to Great Britain, she brought along with her her love of tea. So she did not introduce tea to the British people, but she popularized it. So this blend is sort of an homage to her, Queen Catherine. And it includes 3 different kinds of Chinese black tea, Qi-moon, Panyang, and Yunnan. So it has sort of a mild flavor, not like an English breakfast, which is a little more astringent. This is a much more mild flavor, but very full-bodied. So I'm curious to see what you think. We were talking earlier, and you said you're not that much of a tea drinker, mostly coffee, but I hope that you will enjoy this little treat. And I do have some creamer and some sugar, if you'd like either. Would you care for either?
Yeah, a little bit of creamer's good.
Okay, perfect.
This show's already deeper than I'm used to, culturally speaking.
All right, so that's for you, and you've got a little spoon there. You can stir that up.
Thank you.
You're very welcome. I'm going to take a little bit of sugar for myself. I have these cute little cubes, you see. I have to have sugar cubes for my tea show. Very classic. I had, gosh, I think it maybe was Terry J who was on the show quite a while ago now, and he was very nervous about, using the teacup. A couple of people have been nervous, but don't worry.
Wow, it's very good. Yeah.
Good.
Yeah, my wife's a tea drinker. She drinks the green tea.
Okay, yes. I have done greens on the show. I try to mix it up so it's something fresh every time. So Jack, many people in the area, of course, know you and know your voice very famously. But let's start with where you grew up. What was your childhood like? Tell me a little bit about that.
I was born in Concord, Massachusetts, and I grew up in a town called Topsfield, Mass, which is about 25 miles north of Boston.
Okay.
But when I was first born in Concord, I was about 4 or 5 months old, and my father's job, he worked for Gillette, the safety razor company, moved him to Mexico City.
Oh,
so the first 4 years of my life, I lived, after I was born up here, but my first 4 years or so of my life, I was in Mexico.
Oh my gosh.
And it was actually, Spanish was actually my first language.
Wow,
and
right, because you were little, right?
Yeah, so it was, and I wish I knew it fluently now. I don't. I only basically know school stuff, but just to go ahead a little bit, we came back to the States, and then when I was in the 6th grade, we spent about 4 years in Mexico, and then when I was in the 6th grade, we moved to Argentina, and I spent about a year and a half there before we came back, and I picked up a lot of the Spanish again, but I've forgotten it since, most of it. But so I've lived in foreign countries a couple of times.
That's amazing.
4 years in Mexico and about a year and a half in Argentina. Again, my father's job. But the rest of the time, I grew up in Massachusetts, north of Boston.
Wow, that's an incredible experience to have as a young person.
Yeah, and of course, in Argentina, when I was in the 6th grade, I was in the 6th grade. I went to an American school, but half the day was what you would learn in the U.S. and half the day was Argentine. So I was like in the 6th grade in American and 4th grade in Argentina. But and most of my peers were American kids. That
Right.
for a number. I mean, we went to school with the ambassador to Argentina's kids.
Wow.
And, you know, and
Wow.
and we and to tell you to date myself, it was between the Eisenhower and Kennedy administration. So the
Okay.
ambassador
Yeah.
to Argentina from the U.S. changed when there was new president. So
Yeah.
we got to, and the two were basically the same age as I was at that time. So
Wow. That's a really amazing experience. So, so then you're back in Boston for high school?
yes, I went to public school for a while, and then I went to a prep school, Kimball Union Academy, over not too far from here, in near Hanover, New Hampshire.
Okay.
And I went there for my junior and my senior years, KUA, in Meriden, New Hampshire. Then I went to college for a year, Colorado State. I always wanted to be in broadcasting, but I figured you never really do what you want to do, and I ended up taking business courses, and it wasn't really for me, and I didn't do very well. Excuse me, I am getting over a cold here, but pardon me, I try not to cough during this, but anyway, so I went there for about a year, but after that, and I didn't do very well academically, but I went to a broadcasting school called Career Academy after that, which was located, it's a school that's in various cities around the country, but I went to the Boston one,
Okay.
which was near Fenway Park. And as a matter of fact, it was just about at Fenway Park. It was right in the same building practically of a lot of the offices. And I went 3 nights a week and for 6 months.
Yeah.
And then after that, I always wanted to be in actually sportscasting. And
So tell me about that. You said you always wanted to be.
yeah, it was a lot of times people that are in sportscasting say, well, I realized I couldn't play Major League Baseball, so I decided to be. But I always chuckle when people say that because sportscasting is a separate entity. It's a
Yes.
different. It's
Yes.
That doesn't mean, geez, I can't do that, so I decided to do that. I always wanted to do it from the time I was 7 or 8 years old.
Yeah.
I went to when I was in the Cub Scouts, like in the 3rd grade. We went on a field trip, and the Cub master turned on the radio, and the Celtics were playing in the playoffs. And I immediately fell in love with Johnny Most, who was doing the Celtic game, and I said, I want to do that. And I couldn't have been more than 7 or 8 years old. And
Wow.
So and again, I finally was steered that way when I went to Career Academy. So I went to Career Academy and graduated from that. And this is pre-internet and all that. So I sent all kinds of letters to radio stations around New England and New York and Pennsylvania. I must have sent about 48 letters out. Out of the 48, 12 responded, and out of the 12, 3 had openings. And out of the 3, I got 1, and that was located in Ticonderoga, which is
Okay.
not too far from here.
Yeah. Yeah.
And I stayed there. I got the job there. Matter of fact, the first day I went was I drove through Rutland and all that on my way to Ticonderoga. Little did I know about my future in Rutland.
Right.
And so I stayed there for about a year and a half. Then I went to actually about a year. And then I went to Keene, New Hampshire. I was there for about a year and a half. Then I took a course in Hartford, Connecticut to get a higher class license in radio. The thing is, I always wanted to do sports, but I just did a little bit of sports in Ticonderoga. And I was a disc jockey and things like that. And I really, it was okay, but I didn't really, that's not where I wanted to be, even though a lot of my career had been that, a DJ.
Sure.
And when I went to Keene, New Hampshire, as I said, I took a course in Hartford, Connecticut for a higher class license, the technical part, which some radio stations required and so forth. When I was going to the course, I was leaving the course as the course was about a a couple of month course. I don't remember how long it was. It wasn't too long. And when I was leaving the course, I overlapped with the next class coming in, and one of the people there was Alex Dunn. I know a lot of people might remember him, and Alex Dunn was sent to that class from WSYB, Vermont Radio at that time, and I got to meet him. We kind of overlapped by a week or two, and I said, if anything ever comes up in Rutland, Vermont, let me know. And he did about a week or two later, and I came up for my interview, and I remember the day of my interview was October of 1971, and it was the same day that the McDonald's on South Main Street opened. Not the new one, the old one, the one on South Main Street, and the radio station was doing a remote there. And I went to McDonald's for lunch, and a lot of the people from the radio station were doing the remote. And this was before I met any of them, and I just observed them for a while, and ironically, that was the day that McDonald's opened, and I eventually got the job. I worked at night at WSYB for about 4 or 5 years. I won't tell you all the details of how I left radio stations. What's happened to me, it happens to a lot of people in radio. Sometimes you get laid off or fired for whatever reason. But so I was here from 1971 to 1975. I did a little bit of sports at WSYB, color commentary with Mike Cameron, who's still on radio in the Rutland area. And so after that, an opening came up at WHWB, and I ended up working there for about 7 years, and that's when I really got into being able to do the play-by-play and so forth that I really wanted to do. So I stayed there until about 1981. In the meantime, I did work for WDOT in Burlington, and I did University of Vermont basketball for 4 years, and I live in Rutland and go up there and do the games.
Wow. They
did offer me a full-time job there in 1981, which I went up for about a week, and I didn't, for one reason or another, I didn't really like it there, and I ended up coming back, and I got back to WSYB, and again, did local sports at WSYB for several years. Toward the end of the 1990s, I started to do UVM stuff again, men's and women's basketball, eventually men's and women's hockey, and I did that for about 7 or 8 years, and that's picking me up within the last 15 years or so, toward 2008. 2008 is when I ended up doing the games at WVMT in Burlington, and what happened after that, I ended up leaving that and doing games for the Northeast Sports Network, which is on the internet and so forth, still working at WSYB. Again, excuse me. And so I did that for a while, and I left it to go to the Northeast Sports Network, and I've been actually with the Northeast Sports Network ever since until now. I do Castleton football on NSN, and now I work for the Castleton Sports. I do most of their sports on their internet, their own website and so forth. So I retired from radio about 5 years ago, and I've been doing this basically part-time since. So that brings me up to the present time.
That's quite, I mean, it's quite a career, you know? So it really is.
I always wanted to be in Boston eventually. It's funny, in those early days, I thought, okay, I'll be in Rutland a year or two, and I'll be on my way. But you get sidetracked, and so I'm happy the way things turned out. But nevertheless, I still, to me, it was only go to Boston or nowhere, that type of.
Right, yeah. But life, like you say, life very easily sidetracks us, and what we imagine isn't always what happens, and sometimes it's better that way.
It's so I think all the people I've met and of course the generations go by, and I'm getting to know a lot of the kids at the time we were doing their games, and they're grandparents now. You know.
Yeah. Yeah.
I think of myself as being the same age as the parents, but I'm really the same age as the grandparents. So that's
time is funny like that. Yep. Time is funny like that.
But that, and that's, we're talking about 50 years ago now, or even beyond, 54 years or something like that since I came here in 1971. I've mentioned this in various places that when we, as kids growing up, I was a skier, but believe it or not, when I first came here, I skied just a little bit and never skied again. That was like
funny.
50 years. It was a day that we happened to go to Pico, and it was about 50 below zero, and I was so cold.
No more.
I never went again, and that was years ago. But I've mentioned it in various places when we used to come up skiing. It was before Route 89, and we're talking about the 60s and everything. And it was like back roads.
Oh, yeah.
And we'd go to Mad River, we'd go to Killington, and some of those places, we'd go to New Hampshire too, but we'd come to the Rutland area, and it used to take us forever to come up here, and it'd be 5-6 hour trips, and I used to think, gosh, we're in the middle of nowhere. And I used to say, believe it or not, gee, who would live around here? and I've been here for 54 years or whatever it is. But.
So let me ask you, what is your favorite sport?
Well, I think my favorite sport, I like to say it's like I like them all really, but probably my favorite one to do is football. But I really like them all. It's interesting since growing up, I'd listen to football, hockey, baseball, and basketball on the radio. So that's how I really learned, because I'd listen to all these guys that I idolized. I mentioned Johnny Mostert did the Celtics, and Kirk Gowdy did the Red Sox. My favorite pro sport is probably baseball, but my favorite sport to broadcast is football. And since I got to Castleton, we do their home games and and I do all the sports except for wrestling. Another person does that, but I never grew up listening to soccer on the radio, or to lacrosse, or to volleyball. We do all that stuff, which I learned as we went along. So
how do you learn that? I mean,
it's you just you kind of try to.
Like, do you have to watch other games?
Yeah,
like, are you watching?
Well, as I say, I learned the other sports by growing up and knowing about it.
Right.
Those sports I learned just by doing it.
Yeah.
And field hockey's another one. You don't really hear field hockey on the radio.
Exactly.
Growing up, or soccer either. It's more so now, but.
Right, but but decades ago that was not the case.
Yeah, so I learned that way, sort of on my own. So, and I've been doing the field hockey and soccer and so forth for about 15 years now. So I can't say that I'm exactly an expert on any of those sports, but I learned how to do it over the years, and it's on video now. I started off in radio and video now, and they have the visual and a lot of that. So.
Right. So why is football your favorite?
I just think it's I don't know, it's just the flow of the game and so forth. As I said, I like them all. I mean, hockey is probably the most difficult one, because it's so fast and they use so many different players. And I don't know, to me, football is it's really a radio sport. I think basketball is, baseball is too. I don't know, just the flow of it and so forth. But as I say, I like them all. Yeah.
Do you have any kind of crazy stories about something that happened live on air?
Well, yeah, we got a few of those.
That you could share, that you can actually share.
I say, you name it, I've done it. But yeah, we had some technical things that happened over the years, that's for sure. There is one in football. It was to do road games. You had in those days. I know a lot of times now they're doing it on computers and everything, but we had to order phone lines.
Oh,
and
yes.
It was a state championship game between MSJ and Essex that was played at Burlington. It was pouring rain.
Oh boy.
And WSYB went up to do the game, WHWB went up to do the game, and of course we ordered the phone lines, and WVMT in Burlington was also doing the game. And what happened was, when we got up there, and the late Butch Paul was doing the game with me, he did color, and when we got up there, our line was dead, and WHWB's line was live, so I'm running around. It's pouring rain at Burlington High School. The field was a mess. It was like a swamp. And our line was dead. The only thing was, at that time, we were affiliated with WVMT, so we ended up saving the game because we combined with WVMT. The only problem was doing the game with WVMT, and I did the game with Jim Donovan, who went on, who passed away recently, who went on and became the play-by-play guy for the Cleveland Browns. But anyway,
wow.
He was doing the game for VMT, but they didn't do a lot of high school games in those days. They did college and so forth.
Okay.
And they sold a lot of advertising and oversold it. So we used to, here in Rutland, you take a break after a touchdown or during a timeout.
Sure.
During that game, that MSJ Essex game, they took a break. We had to take a break like almost after every play. It was so overloaded with commercials, it killed the flow of it. Quite frankly, the whole broadcast was terrible. But
yeah, I mean, how do you even catch up with that?
But we had to do what they were doing, and,
sure.
and so forth. A lot of people were complaining about it.
I can imagine.
And so we got through it all right, but that was something that I've never forgotten. MSJ ended up winning that game. It was a big upset. They had lost to Essex during the regular season, but all people could talk about, unless they tuned to WHWB, and was, that was awful. They were taking a break every 2 seconds. So that was one time, of many.
Yeah.
A little thing that happened before that, going to the game. As I mentioned, it was pouring rain. I went up with Butch Paul in his car, and we were he picked me up. We were on the River Street Bridge, and we got in a accident with I won't mention his name because I can still remember the name, but an accident with a kid from the MSJ football team was on his way to school.
Oh my gosh.
And we got in an accident, and believe it or not, the windshield broke. There was glass everywhere. I had the glass in my hair.
Oh my
I mean, I wasn't hurt. We weren't
gosh.
injured or anything, but I had it in my hair and my socks, my hair, everywhere. And I told Butch, we're all right, let's get going. Because I always had this thing about getting to a game on time, and way ahead of time.
The show must go on,
And this was
right?
before, and it was pouring rain. This was before we even got there and had that accident. And I said to Butch, we got to get going. But we went back to his house and got another car and so forth. But that was a little sidelight to that. And on top of that, I mentioned it was pouring rain, and the field in Burlington was absolutely a swamp. This was pre-artificial turf and everything.
Oh, yeah.
And in that game, the uniforms, I always lived in fear of uniforms getting covered up with mud and everything. And you
Right,
couldn't
because you can't
the numbers.
see. Yeah, right.
So that was part of the broadcast, too. There was another one, too, speaking of championship games. This was Rutland and Middlebury back in 1996 or so.
Okay.
And for a local game, we had a unit they called the Marty unit, which they used for home games. And for some reason, we didn't have a good connection. And so there was like a whistle. I was on, but there was a annoying whistle during the whole game, which I heard. But the Marty unit itself, we used to listen to it off the radio locally, and sometimes it interfered with what you heard on the radio anyway, even though it was clear on the air. But in this particular case, the whistle was on the air, and it wasn't, and it was really annoying. And the thing that happened was the whole town was talking about how awful that was the next day, and I swear I was the only one in town that didn't know. I heard the whistle, but I thought it was the radio being interfered with, and I was the only, and I felt terrible. Rutland won that against Middlebury, but that's all anybody in town. It was all over town. Oh, it was terrible, and it was terrible. And I actually didn't know. I was the only one that didn't know. Everybody
That's funny.
So,
That's funny.
so there are a couple. What you said, do I have any? So there are a couple that come to mind that I've never forgotten.
I mean, that's the thing, right, about doing something live, though.
Yeah.
You know, you can't go back and redo, and you have to just deal with what comes.
I didn't know until I went back to the radio station afterwards, and I listened to the tape, and you could hear it, but you know, the broadcast, but it was like a annoying whistle during the whole time. Oh, you know, whatever. and again. And everybody was talking about it. And I just felt because we had like a sports talk show like the next day.
Yes.
And we had that once a week.
Yep.
And as a matter of fact, that game I was talking about, happened to be a Monday night because it was postponed from Saturday because of bad weather to a Monday night. So we usually had the sports talk show on Monday night, and that particular week we had it on Tuesday.
Right.
And I came on and I apologized and mentioned what I just mentioned to you. I said I didn't know, and I'm the only one in the whole town that didn't know. And I'll never forget that. But
oh my gosh.
just a couple of things.
I'm sure your stories are, you know,
so,
multitudes.
And somewhere along the line, you know, on a personal note, I met you.
Yes.
And
Yes.
always saying, you know, I always try to get to Fenway Park, but you did. I actually, as people know now, certainly Olivia's well known singing the national anthem and Danny Boy and all that. And
Yes, you always had me do Danny Boy if I came on your
And I've come
show.
and I've gone to a couple of funerals that you've been
Oh,
there
well,
to
yes.
sing and so forth. But anyway, but speaking of going to Fenway Park, I did have a chance to, in my job at the Northeast Sports Network, they had what they call Frozen Fenway, not only for the Bruins, but also college. And I did get a chance, believe it or not, to broadcast a game at Fenway Park, but it was hockey.
Okay,
Not,
well.
it was between Trinity and Williams College back in 2000. I think it was 2010, something like that. But so I got a chance to be there too.
Well, that's great. That's great. See, we both made it. We both made it.
Yeah. And I know you were there during the time of the Boston Marathon when they
Yes,
came
right after
back
they
and
caught
it was
the
Vermont
bomber,
Day and everything. But
yes, yeah.
And I have told you this before. I had certainly I knew members of your family and so forth. And
Yeah.
so I came in thinking I'm not going to bring that stuff up, and I ended up bringing it up.
I'm telling you, you never know where the show will go. You know, this is not live broadcast, but you know, it is live. We're not taking breaks here.
Yeah,
so,
no, I know. Again, I apologize. I've had a cold for a couple of weeks now, but I said, well, I can't cough during the thing. I've been keeping track. I've coughed twice. You can't
we're going to dock your pay. We'll dock your pay every cough. Yeah.
So,
Well, it's been great to have you on, Jack. It really has. You know, whenever I've been on the radio with you, it's been fun. And your voice is just iconic. You know, it's just iconic in this area. And, you know, you were talking earlier about your aspiration to be in Boston, but I hope that you recognize how much of an impact you've had on this community here and how beloved you are in this community. And, you know, people really appreciate and admire what you've done for this area. And it's a really special thing. So thank you.
I appreciate that. As I say, it hasn't been, it's been just fine as I look back. It's okay that I didn't get to do the Red Sox. I was interviewed one time, or not interviewed, but they did call me one time when there was an opening to send a tape. So I always figure it didn't go any further than that. That was like in the 1980s, late 1980s. But it's been okay. And in doing University of Vermont hockey and basketball and so forth, I got to go to other play. I've gone to Notre Dame and Duke and places like that. And I went to Alaska, so I've got to have that opportunity as well.
You've still had that aspect of getting out and seeing the world.
Right.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Well, thank you so much for coming on and chatting with me today. I really have enjoyed having you. I hope you enjoyed it too. And
I
thank
certainly
you,
have.
thank you all for watching, and I will see you next time on Tea and Talk.
With it now, Sabrin to the left wing circle, sends it right in front to McDevitt, and McDevitt scores! Beautiful play, Sabrin to McDevitt right in front.